Most of you probably know that the Bible texts that we preach on are often picked weeks in advance. We never know for sure what the context is going to be when a sermon needs to actually be preached from that text. And there are lots of Sundays when you could preach on loving God and loving your neighbor, and it could feel just like, well, yeah, isn't that nice and sweet? Not today. Because as hate comes out of the shadows, the command to love becomes more important than ever. And we realize that platitudes are not what this passage is about. The call to love God and to love others is not some sweet saccharine thing that we mumble to each other and nod our heads and say, well, yeah, they taught me that in church school. I've known that my whole life. When hate is sent in explosive form through the mail, when hate takes the form of a gunman with a machine gun killing Jews because they are Jews, it is not platitudes that is called for. What does it mean to love God with our whole selves? Body, mind, and spirit. What does it mean to love God in that way? It's hard sometimes to know what it means to love God anyway, because God can't be seen, God can't be embraced, God can't be held the way our objects of love often are. But I've learned over the years about God this, that God is best seen in the impact of God. God is best seen by God's actions in the world. And what are God's actions in the world? Well, here's one. God creates. God created you. Anybody here make yourself? Anybody here make a tree? Anybody here make the river flow? Can you make it rain? Can you call a world like this into being with the sound of your voice? God has done so. Here's another. God forgives. Anybody here never need to be forgiven? Anybody perfect here? Well, it seems like we've all stood in need of forgiveness. And if you've been in need of forgiveness, you know that the worst part about being in need of forgiveness is that there's nothing you can do to make it happen. Forgiveness is given as a gift by the one you have harmed. And all you can do is say that you are so sorry, and that you can hope that the other can restore you to right relationship with them. And when you have been forgiven, it is because God is. And when you forgive another, it is because God is. There's no other reason to do it. Without God, we would be entirely justified in walking around hating each other forever. But we see God in forgiveness. What does it mean to love God with our whole selves? It means to love the fruit that flows from God's hands. All that is created all that has been created, whether we like it or not. We are called to love it. And we are called to love the fruits of forgiveness that flow so freely from God. And to give up the desire for revenge, to give up the desire to hate, to give up the desire to punish. Because what we know, because what Jesus taught, we know to be true. And what does it mean to love our neighbors as we love ourselves? Well, I think all of us know that it doesn't mean sending explosives through the mail. And it doesn't mean taking up arms against innocent others, right? We can all agree on this. But loving another the way we are loved, the way we would want to be loved, means that we cannot judge others. We can't sort them into categories. We can't sort them into enemies. Because we don't want to be treated that way by others. Now, there are times in this world where when I feel like the command to love makes so much sense. It just, why wouldn't you? It's just, right? You've been there. You hold a baby in your arms. Love is the only thing that makes sense. You hang out with friends. Love is the only thing that makes sense. You gather in a sanctuary like this, and love is the only thing that makes sense. But can we love? In a world where there are so many voices saying, oh, love is for me and people like me. Love is not for you or them. To love our neighbors the way we want to be loved on days like this, to love in this way is an act of resistance. It is an act of opposition to hatred. It is an act of resistance to those who would say that it's okay to hate your enemies. So, my friends, on a day like today, when we hear this commandment from Jesus, that we are to love God with our whole selves, and we are to love others the way we have ourselves been loved, this is not a day for platitudes. This is a day for reaching out, for standing up, for speaking up, for saying aloud to those acts of violence, no, never. Not me, not mine, not those I love. And furthermore, not only will I say no to that, but I will say to the whole world that something better has come to me, that a deeper truth has come to me, that Jesus has taught me a different way, a different path. And I want, with my whole heart, for you to walk that path with me. And I don't care who you voted for. And I don't care who you loved, who you love. And I don't care what the color of your skin is. And I don't care what the name of God is by which you know God and in the ways in which you worship God. What has come to me is the power of love. The power of love to create, to move, to lift, to forgive, to move us beyond the intractable place we find ourselves, pushing against another instead of opening our hearts and our minds and our arms and being vulnerable in their presence. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm sick to death, and you are too, of watching this happen again and again and again. And so I'm doubling down today on this commandment that we must love God with our whole selves. Everything in us. And we need to love each other, including the stranger, in just the way we'd like to be loved. And doing that may not stop this from happening today or tomorrow or even next week. But our God has been speaking to us of love for 3,000 years, and our God will continue to speak to us of love for the next 3,000 years, if that's what it takes. And we will walk in God's ways, and we will love, and we will be loved, and nothing will be as it once was. Hear the command to love God, to love our neighbor, and to share that love with all the world. Let us serve together. Amen.